thank you again. I'm Maddie. I just started as the digital editor at the Explorer in June.
Katie Rhodes. I'm 36 and I'm based out of Middle Grove, New York, which is right on the southern border of the Adirondack Blue Line.
Awesome. And have you always lived here?
No, I grew up in central New York, in a town called Norwich that has more cows than people, very rural area. And I ended up moving to Saratoga Springs in 2011, I believe it was, for work. Lived in the city for a little while, and then eventually married my now husband, and we moved out into a more remote area, kind of northwest of Saratoga, and that's where we've been ever since. And we love it here. We have 8 acres. We have a little
Awesome.
homestead and some animals, so I think we're here for the long haul.
Yeah, how was that shift?
I mean, I still miss sometimes being able to walk or bike everywhere, you know. It's
Mhm.
that's the one thing with being in the country is you're so far from everything. Um,
Yes.
but that's one of the reasons I love, training and being so fit is yeah, I might be, 15 miles outside of the city, but I can still reasonably ride my bike down,
Mhm.
do whatever I need to do and ride back. Whereas, if you don't have the fitness to do that, it's just not even an option that's on the table. So one
Right.
of my big things right now that I'm like, constantly planning out is how can I not get in a car? How can I go do the things I want to do? You know, go to my appointments, whatever it is, and never step foot in a car. And if it is possible, then I do that. I bike or I run
Mhm.
instead.
Yeah, absolutely. So, going into your hiking endeavors, what really kickstarted that for you? And has hiking always been a passion of yours?
Surprisingly, I was a really stagnant kid. A lot of people assume that I grew up in a family that was like outdoors all the time, always doing physical activity, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. My parents both worked multiple jobs, and it was kind of like by the time we were all together as a family at the end of the day or on the weekend, it was like they were just trying to catch up. And as a result, my brother and I would sometimes just get sat in front of the TV or
Mhm.
that sort of thing. So I had no familiarity with hiking or camping or anything of that nature. Um, Really at all, except for maybe like a nature walk or two until I got to college. And then I went to SUNY Potsdam, and I needed a PE credit, and I was not a sports kid at all. And so the thought of like any sort of team sport class was mortifying to me.
Mhm.
So I was looking through the catalog and I found this entry for Backpacking 101. And I was like, I don't really know what that is, but it sounds better than, basketball or tennis or something. So I'm going to sign up for it. And it ended up being a full weekend of backpacking to DeBar Mountain in the Adirondacks. And I didn't have any of the right gear. I had no fitness at all. So it beat me up. I was scratched. I was bruised. I was covered in mud. I was exhausted. And I totally fell in love with it. And that was
Yeah.
just the catalyst, from there. I did the outdoor education program through SUNY Potsdam,
Mhm.
which culminates in multiple multi-week trips in the Adirondacks and then also out west in the Gila Wilderness in New Mexico, where we learn and then test our outdoor leadership skills, our land navigation skills, things of that nature. And it was so challenging, and I loved that. I loved being challenged in that way, and I loved living outdoors for extended periods of time, and I just loved the way that it made me feel. And it was super empowering for me as a young person that was naturally very introverted and very very shy. It really got me out of my shell and kind of just gave me a platform to jump off of to be comfortable within myself, I guess.
Yeah.
And I've been hiking ever since and camping ever since.
All right, so jumping into some of the questions, these are all from Reddit. Lots of It's a variety of questions. So the first one, someone did ask, this is in regards to, I'm familiar, you did the 46 peaks in 1 week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what people were very interested in learning more about is someone wrote, what were 5 useful things that were in your backpack that people may not usually bring with them that you found very useful?
Oh, interesting. Okay. Um, Well, on that particular trip, I learned a lot about what not to do. And I've definitely refined what I keep in my backpack for really, really
Mm,
difficult extended trips now. So I'll share some of the things that I had in my pack then, and then just kind of things that maybe people wouldn't think about. One of the big ones for me is chafe bomb.
mm,
And that's like super, super crucial for me to stay comfortable in the backcountry. I use it like on my body, under my arms to prevent chafing, along my bra line, stuff like that. But also, I'll cover my feet in it. And I think a lot of people don't realize when your feet are either submerged in water or just sweaty from hiking for long periods of time, it's actually kind of absorbing the moisture from your skin. And so, if you can create a barrier on the skin of your feet, it's very, very protective, and it's really great for preventing blisters. So I'll use either Aquifer, I'll use Chafe Bomb. I'll coat my entire foot before any extended hike, between my toes, like not being shy about it. And I just find that I have no issues at all. So that was one of the things on that through hike of the 46 that people are shocked to hear is I had zero blisters the entire time. That was not an issue that I dealt with, and part of that was because I always made sure that I had some sort of protective coating on my feet.
mm,
Because if you don't and they stay moist for those extended periods of time, what happens is you um, start getting like deep cracks in the bottom of your foot. And I think a lot of people, when they start to feel that pain on the bottom of their foot with every step, that's some of what they're feeling is the actual skin on the bottom of your foot is breaking down because it doesn't have a protective layer. So that's really useful. What else? Trying to think of things that wouldn't be obvious. I always wear a buff. So I just have a short buff that is great for if it's hot, I'll wet it and keep it around my neck as just kind of a cooling towel. If it's cool out, I'll put it around my ears. And that
mm,
saves a little bit of weight because you're not, bringing a full hat, but it's still protective against the wind, prevents some of that like discomfort in your ears when there's a lot of wind blowing on the summits. And it's easier to just pull it up and down. Once you're on the summit, you pull it up, and then as you descend, you pull it down. Um, what else? Poles are really useful on the larger days. Like the ultralight black diamond poles. I always use those on really big days, or really big efforts like that week long one. Um, and those are mostly useful for the descent because that's really where you start to get the breakdown in your legs. And you
mm.
can just offload some of that onto your arms, which is great. Um, how many was that? Three?
Three.
Sorry, this isn't a quick answer.
No, that's
you'll,
okay.
you'll have to comment together. I want to give an interesting responses, but I'm trying to think of what it would be. Something you're not thinking of. Oh, salt tabs. Salt tabs are super important for me. Um, Not everyone has this issue, but I'm a very salty sweater. So I tend to get like
Mm,
salt crystals building up on my skin on hot days. And for me, salt is medicine when I'm out in the
mm,
backcountry. If I'm feeling fatigued or off, or I'm not really thinking straight, the first thing I try is to take salt. And I really like the salt tabs, the ones that come in the pill form, because they digest and they break down easily without needing to eat like a large amount of salty food or anything like that. And that for me just usually gets me out of a funk right away. Um,
mm,
I think a lot of people don't think about electrolytes. More so now they are, but in the past, a lot of folks would never think to replace their electrolytes specifically. So that's huge. Um, Liquid nutrition is another one that I use a lot. I would say, depending on the adventure, 60 to 80% of my calories come from liquid nutrition. So I use a lot of high carb, either Tailwind, or I use a product called Infinite, which has a little bit of protein in it because that can be great in really long efforts. And then you don't have to worry about mechanical digestion, which is great for saving energy. And it just makes it easier to feel good the whole time,
mhm,
rather than trying to eat whole foods, which sometimes is not is not something that your body wants to do anymore
Right.
after quite a while. Um, I don't know how many that was. That
5. I think we hit 5.
was how, okay.
Yeah. Was how bad were your blisters, if you had any, during such a strenuous through hike? And what section, peak, or range of the through hike was the most tiring for you?
I did not deal with any blisters on my feet at all. I have foot privilege, I think, when it comes to hiking. I've really dialed in what I do with my feet before, during, and after longer adventures. And for me, I wear a very specific brand of shoe. That's the only shoe that I trust. It's the Topo Terra Venture. It's got great grip and it holds up for me, and it just seems to fit my foot well. Um, One of the things that I really love about, being out and having adventures is something different works for everyone. It's a puzzle you have to solve for yourself. So you
Mhm.
kind of have to go through that process and figure out what works for you. So the Topo paired with Swiftwick socks and some sort of either Aquifer or Chafe Balm on my feet seems to be the perfect combination. And I literally never get blisters, no matter how long I'm out, no matter how many days in a row I'm out. I did, however, get pretty bad blisters on my hands from my poles. I didn't have protective gloves or anything like that. And so I ended up literally wearing holes into the palms of my hands because, towards the end, my legs were just so fatigued. I was really, really leaning into my trekking poles quite a bit. So that was a lesson learned. And I now wear just these lightweight fingerless trail gloves from Black Diamond when I'm doing big things like that. Um, what was the other part of the question?
What was the most tiring part of the through hike for you?
That's right. Gosh, let's see. If I had to choose one part, I would probably choose going up Whiteface from the landing. If you've been up that trail, it's so fun. It's so beautiful. But towards the top, you're kind of like crawling over these really large boulders. You're like scrambling up these big, beautiful glacial erratic boulders, which I would normally love to do, and I do love that section of the trail. But at the time, it was right at the end. I was super, super exhausted and my legs were just really broken down. And I was just like kind of belly flopping up the boulders, just going, okay, I'm going to get there eventually. It's just not going to be pretty.
Someone else asked how much bushwhacking was involved.
Not a ton. In general, I find in the Adirondacks, the bushwhacking can be quite difficult. And so there are a number of different adventures that I've planned where you could add in additional bushwhacks, and I generally will do larger mileage on trail rather than add those in. Um, there are a couple places where I know the bushwhack. I've done it a few times, and it's not as thick, and I'm pretty comfortable with it. So good examples would be between the Cole, between Dial and Nippletop in the Dix range. I just did that one recently on the 24 and 24, and I've done it
Mhm.
both directions. I've done it multiple times. So I just know that one pretty well. And it doesn't take a lot of brain power to navigate. And the bushwhack between Big Slide, the brothers in Big Slide, Cole, and then coming across to Porter to avoid private land. That's another one where it's not super thick back there. And I've done it a few times. And then there's other bushwhacks that, from an ethical standpoint, that I just choose not to do. And a good example of that, which is something I chose not to do during the 24 and 24, is the bushwhack between Iroquois and Marshall. It is something that I have done before. We did it on the 46 through hike because at the time, I don't think I understood the repercussions of doing that bushwhack. But since then, the DEC and the Adirondack Mountain Club have come out and said, we understand this is a traditional bushwhack, but it does go through alpine vegetation or areas
Mhm.
where you could trample alpine vegetation. And so they ask that hikers no longer do that. And so I do like to respect that sort of, request. And also just have awareness about, what are the repercussions of my
Mhm.
actions. And in that case, that's a bushwhack where I think especially if you get off of kind of an established herd path in there, you could really do a lot of vegetation damage. And I see that as an alpine researcher. I actually have a research plot that's right in that region where folks will do that bushwhack. And I do see some deterioration in
Mm.
the alpine plants in that particular research plot. So I've directly observed some of that damage, and I just don't want to be contributing to it further.
It's kind of a general one, but they ask, why do you think people do such extreme athletics and how do people kind of progress to that point?
Yeah, the why question. Gosh,
Mhm.
I could write a book on the whys.
Yeah.
I mean, athletics is a replication of life in so many ways, right? We challenge ourselves and we run into issues along the way, and we have to problem solve. And in the case of the 24 and 24, where I had a crew, you have to trust your friends and you have to ask for help.
Mhm.
And there are so many important lessons that I learn from doing these huge efforts that make me a better person and a better member of society. Um, and also, I mean, I think it's natural human intuition to seek out these challenges, these sources of discomfort in our
Mhm.
normally comfortable day-to-day life, because it's what we were built for, is to face challenges and overcome them. So for me, the reason I choose to do these extreme things in the high peaks and in the mountains specifically is for the same reason that you would choose to go run a marathon with your best friend. You want to challenge yourself, and you want to do it with an entity that you love and that you trust and that you're building a relationship with. And for me, that's the mountains. They
Mhm.
really are. I think of them as um, almost like a personified presence in my life. And I just feel so comfortable there that that's where I choose to challenge myself to these extreme extents. And with that said, I think a lot of people see some of the things that I do and they consider them quote unquote extreme because it's much more intensive than what the average hiker will do. But I've spent, decades refining, my fitness, my land navigation skills, my resilience within my body, things like that. And so the feeling that you or the average person would get from, let's say, finishing their 46 high peaks, for me to get that same level of satisfaction that I've overcome a challenge that was that difficult for me, I need to do something to this extent to really challenge myself at this point,
Mhm.
because I've just spent so much time in these mountains, and I've summited them all so many times that you know it's never easy. The mountains are never easy to travel across, but in order to really like get myself to the bounds of my abilities, I have to plan really big adventures and
Mhm.
you know make it fulfilling because of that level of challenge for my personal skill set.
Someone asked, how much did you sleep in the 7 days you were out there?
Yeah, it was. I would consider it quite a bit. It might not sound like quite a bit to someone who's just going out and leisurely doing it, but I would say around probably 6 hours a night, which when you're pushing to cover that kind of mileage every day, that's fairly luxurious, I would say.
Mhm.
And then at the end, I think the last night it was about 2 hours. But prior to that point, yeah, it was, we were getting quite a bit of sleep.
What are some of your favorite foods to eat while doing long hikes?
Mm. It changes every season. Pretty much every summer and every winter season, I'll get a new snack that I'm just so into, and I eat it on every hike. And then at the end of the season, I'll completely abandon it and pick something new.
Sick of it. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So this past winter, it was the Oreo cakesters.
Okay.
They're like these soft Oreo cake things. It's like chocolate, like cake cookies on the outside and cream on the inside, and they don't
Yum.
freeze solid, which is super important in the
Mhm.
winter. In this summer, what's been my go-to this summer? Oreos themselves are always great. Applesauce packets always go down easy.
Mhm.
Pierogies are always a go-to
Mm,
for me. They're savory, which you crave when you're out there. The mashed potatoes go down easy. It's like a running gel of mashed potatoes wrapped in carbs, which is
mhm.
perfect. And you can just kind of pluck one out of your pack and just have it in your hand and be, running down the trail and eating it
Yeah.
at your own pace. So pierogies are kind of uh, I'm notorious for having a pierogi in my hand while I'm going
Uh,
down the trail.
are the black flies?
Right now, not bad. I had no issue with them when I was on trail for the 24 and 24. They're really worse earlier in the year. I think also if you just keep moving, they don't tend to be a terrible issue. What I'll see people do a lot is they will hike at a pace that's outside sustainable for them, and then they'll
Mhm.
take long breaks in between. And I'm a guide in the mountains, and so what I usually will tell my clients is let's go a little slower and let's just maintain that sustainable pace, kind of that
Mhm.
forever pace. And that way you're not stopping for these long periods of time and losing a bunch of time and making it into like a horrendously long day where you just don't want to be on your feet anymore at the end and it's not fun. But b the bugs just don't bother you as much if you're continually moving. Once you stop and you're exhaling and that carbon, dioxide is in the air and they find you, that's when they really attack.
Yeah. While you were hiking, were you ever nervous around the crowds?
On the 24 and 24.
On the 46.
Oh, there weren't a ton of crowds. I think the most crowded area was probably the McIntyre Range. But no, I wouldn't say nervous. I think it definitely when you're in the back country camping out and spending most of your time not around a bunch of people and then suddenly you're immersed in a more crowded summit, it can definitely be a little bit of a strange feeling.
Mm.
But there was no fear or anything like that. Yeah, if anything, it was kind of nice to like break things up a little bit, see some
Yeah.
faces. There were some folks who were aware of what we were doing and would kind of say something, be positive, or cheer us
Awesome.
on, that kind of thing. Um, which we weren't expecting because we didn't realize my husband had, kind of started sharing the story and it had gained some footing while we were in the woods. So we were a little bit startled when people would know who we were and what we were doing.
I have a long distance hiking background on the PCT and AT, but I've never done a trip longer than a weekend in the high peaks. How did you go about laying the best route, and did you have to pivot at any points?
Um, so the route for that particular effort is there's kind of just a logical way to go about things. And there are, tweaks that you can make. You can do certain sections before others. Some folks have set up camps and done long trail runs and looped back on themselves. So you do have to figure out what your personal route will be, but there's a
Mhm.
general kind of way to go about it that just logically makes sense. Um, I think that there are certain peaks that I feel a particularly deep connection to. And so I was doing a lot of logistics on that particular effort. And so I was kind of making some of the decisions based on my gut of, I really think I'm going to want to go see Colden at this point in the effort, or,
Mhm.
um, whatever, Street and I aren't my two favorites, and so let's get them done a little bit earlier, and so we
Yeah.
we'll be more compelled to keep moving. Little decisions like that, in terms of like choosing the route. um what was the other part of the question?
Did you have to pivot at any point?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There was a point on, I believe it was day 4 or 5, when we were on top of Marcy where a storm came through. And so
Mhm.
we didn't end up changing the route, but we did have to kind of drop off the summits for a little while that storm came through. And, that was discouraging because it sets you back quite a bit. And so you're just sitting there kind of waiting for the storm to pass and waiting to be able to continue your progress on your adventure. And there's quite a bit ahead of you. So that can be a little discouraging. But besides that, yeah, we kind of stuck with the plan.
After your 24 and 24 and the 46 peaks, is which fastest known time is next for you?
I love this question. I don't have anything specific on my calendar right now. I know really talented athletes that will plan multiple things in a year and they're already on to the next thing once they complete one thing. That's just not how I have thrived in the past. For me, I'll pick a goal, I'll be really focused on that goal. And then once it's done, I'm ready to kind of just play in the mountains and have fun for the
Mhm.
rest of the year. So
Yeah.
nothing else like competitive or huge this season. I think I tend to take things one season at a time because you don't know. I'm not going to be the same person next season. And I
Mhm.
don't know where my body will be at, and I don't know where my mind will be at. And I'm not the sort of person that's going to chase a record to say that I did or for kudos or anything like that. I choose these routes and I choose these adventures because they're meaningful to me in that moment. And it's something that I'm really compelled by. And I guess I just don't know what I'll be compelled by next season. So,
Yeah.
yeah, probably what will happen is over the winter, like as spring starts to peek its head out, I'll check in with myself and evaluate, is there anything that's really piquing my interest right now? Does my body feel ready? Does my mind feel ready? Where am I at in my life? That as well.
Mhm.
If there's a lot of external stressors, then I don't need to push something big because it's a lot of training. It's a lot of planning.
Mhm.
It becomes all consuming as it gets closer. So you need to have the capacity to go all in. But I have lots of big adventures that float
Yeah.
around in the back of my brain.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add? Maybe any words of encouragement for hikers just kind of starting out?
Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I think that the key is getting out of your comfort zone, being
Mhm.
comfortable with being uncomfortable, um, and just pushing that comfort zone just a little bit at a time. And what happens is little by little, over the years, you will build skills and you will build fitness. And one day, who knows, you could be doing things like the 46 through hike and like the 24 and 24. I've met a lot of people that have said things like, I could never do that. And the truth is, there are a lot of people out there that could do it. They just have to
Mhm.
believe. And so, especially for hikers in minority groups, for me, I can speak to, women in the hiking community. You're stronger than you think you are. And I think it's just a matter of believing in yourself and feeling empowered to go out and find that crazy goal, that crazy dream that seems a little scary, and just deciding I'm going to go for it. I'm going to see what happens. And even if you don't hit your goal, you're probably going to do something pretty amazing you didn't realize you could do along the
Mhm.
way. So um, just believe. And
Mhm.
if there are folks out there that need trail beta, that need advice, that just need someone to cheer them on, I love being that person. Please don't be shy. Reach out on social media, and just ask me any question. And I'm happy to cheer you on.
Thank you so much for your help.
Yeah, no worries. It was awesome to talk to you.
Yeah, great talking to you too. I'll be in touch.
Okay, sounds good.
Great.
Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.